All right, today we're going to crack open one of the most important processes on Earth. We're going inside the microscopic engine that builds pretty much all life, turning what looks like a super complex blueprint into a story that, hopefully, makes a whole lot of sense. This is happening right now, in every green leaf around you. So let's just dive right in.
I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. How does a massive tree, or even just a little blade of grass, create itself from practically nothing, from thin air? It sounds kind of like magic, doesn't it?
Well, the answer isn't magic, it's just some incredibly cool biochemistry. And the best way to understand it is to think of it like a tiny, super efficient factory that's running nonstop. Okay, so before we get our hands dirty on the factory floor, let's get the big picture. You know, a bird's eye view of the whole operation. What is this factory even trying to do?
This is basically its mission statement. The Calvin cycle's whole job is to take a simple gas, carbon dioxide, and use a bunch of energy to forge it into sugar. And that sugar is the fuel and the literal building block for almost all life.
Now, any factory needs three basic things, right? A location, some raw materials, and power to run the machines. For our little factory, the location is a soupy fluid inside the chloroplast called the stroma. The raw material is plain old carbon dioxide, and the power, that comes from two molecular batteries that get charged up by sunlight, ATP and NADPH.
So let's head to the first stage of the production line. You can think of this as the receiving department. Its entire job is to get that raw material, CO2, into the system.
This makes perfect sense. You can't build anything if you don't get the parts through the door first. In biology, we call this first crucial step carbon fixation. So here's how it goes down. A CO2 molecule just floats on in. Our factory manager, this super important enzyme called Rubisco, snatches it. And get this, Rubisco is the single most abundant protein on planet Earth. It's a huge deal. Anyway, it grabs the CO2 and immediately attaches it to a reusable machine part, a 5-carbon molecule called RUBP. This makes a really unstable 6-carbon molecule that just instantly snaps in half. And just like that, the carbon from the air is fixed and officially on the assembly line.
Okay, raw materials are in. Now it's time for the real action. We've got to power up the assembly line, build our product, and then, and this is so important, reset all the machinery for the next run.
This next part is called the reduction phase. And this is where the magic really happens. We're about to pump a ton of energy into those simple carbon molecules to turn them into something really valuable.
For those batteries we talked about, ATP and NADPH, they get to work. ATP comes in and spends its energy. NADPH donates its high-energy electrons. And all that chemical power transforms our boring 3-carbon molecules into a supercharged 3-carbon sugar. We call it G3P. And this is our finished product.
And this is a huge moment. G3P is the prize. It's an incredibly versatile little sugar that the plant can use right away to make glucose for energy or something like cellulose to build its own body. It's basically the universal Lego block for life.
But here's where the factory strategy gets really clever. For every 6 molecules of this G3P sugar it makes, only 1 actually leaves the factory as profit. Just 1. The other 5, they get immediately sent right back into the system to be recycled.
And that recycling leads us to the final and maybe the smartest phase of all, regeneration. A successful factory can't just run once and shut down. It has to be sustainable. It's got to reset itself for the next shift.
So the factory takes those 5 recycled G3P sugars, gives them another little jolt of energy from some more ATP, and then rearranges them to perfectly rebuild the original RUBP, that reusable machine part we started this whole thing with. And with that, the factory is reset, cleaned up, and ready for the next molecule of CO2 to come through the door.
So, after all that, the grabbing, the powering up, the recycling, the resetting, what's the net result? You know, what does the factory's final balance sheet look like?
Well, get this. To get just one of those precious G3P sugar molecules out of the factory as actual usable profit, the entire cycle has to spin 3 full times. It's a system that definitely values reinvestment over a quick payout. So here's the final receipt. To make one single G3P sugar, the factory burns through 3 CO2 molecules, a whopping 9 ATP batteries, and 6 of those NADPH electron carriers. It's an expensive process for sure, but the payoff is, well, the foundation for our entire food web.
And that's really the bottom line here. We're not just looking at a series of chemical reactions. This is the engine of life itself. It takes inorganic, non-living carbon right out of the air and turns it into the organic stuff that makes up you, me, and pretty much every other living thing.
So that leaves us with one last big question to think about. This microscopic factory is humming along, all over the world, powering our ecosystems, our agriculture, everything. So what happens to us, to our food supply, to our climate, if this essential little engine starts to slow down? Something to think about.